Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to talk about one of the ultimate wintertime bass fishing lures, especially for smallmouth bass. It's finally that time of year to be fishing that bait, and that's going to be the blade bait. This tiny little chunk of metal and lead, all shined up with some chrome plating, is like the most magical bait to fish this time of year. Water temperatures 40 to 45 degrees, and those fish will still be willing to eat a bait. So today we're gonna break down everything you need to know about this guy right here to catch some big fall and winter smallmouth. So stay tuned, let's get right into it. All right, so before we get to fishing here, let's break down the blade bait selection, rod and reel selection, all of that before we go show you how to fish it. So let's start with rod and reels. In today's video, I will be fishing it on a bait caster. I used a 7-foot medium heavy, 14-pound test fluorocarbon, and my regular Corrado MGL 7:1-to-1 gear ratio. The reason I chose that rod is because all my spinning rods were occupied. So that brings me to the next point, is that you can use a spinning rod for this, and I actually prefer it because you can use braided line to a fluorocarbon leader. You could do that with a bait caster too, but the braided line to fluorocarbon leader really lets you tell what that bait is doing and get more sensitivity to make sure you're fishing that bait effectively, and getting the correct amount of distance off the bottom, and we'll talk about all that on how to actually fish it out on the water, but also to make sure if your bait's tangled up, you'll feel immediately, because you won't be able to feel the vibration as nice. So the other bait, I actually did another blade bait video that'll be coming out in the near future here. That one, I was fishing it on a spinning rod, either a 7-foot medium or 7-foot medium heavy spinning rod with 15-pound test braid to an 8 or 10-pound test fluorocarbon leader, and that is my setup there. You can use either one, whichever one you already have is going to work just fine, or whichever one you have a personal preference for. If you like the bait caster better, work just fine. The bait selection is more important, so when it comes to bait selection, I use the 6th Sense Slice blade baits. Yes, they are a sponsor of the channel, but I've also fished many other blade baits in the past. The Buckeye Lures, the Silver Buddies. I think I fished a Johnson Thin Fisher once or something like that. I don't remember what it was called. There's a bunch out there. The two biggest things that you get with the 6th Sense one, more realism and color selection and different sizes. So other blade baits, you're gonna get gold, white, and silver, and they're going to come in a 1/2 or 3/8 or 3/4, which is fine, but the bait size is all the same. They just put more lead on each one. The 6th Sense ones are actually different sizes. So the smallest one, the 3/8, is going to be 2 inches long. The bigger one, that's 5/8, which is like the standard, that one is like 2.5, 3 inches long, and then the biggest one is even bigger than that. That one's like 7/8 of an ounce and even bigger. So if your bait size is different, you can use a different size bait to mimic that as well. If you like the other ones, there's no problem with those ones either. I've caught numerous fish on the Buckeye Lures and Silver Buddies, tons of bass on those ones too. They work just fine. The only thing I wish I could get is the better color selection and the different sizes in those baits as well. I think that does help sometimes, especially that smaller size. That 2-inch size could really be a game changer sometimes. It's less vibration in that colder water, and it's a smaller profile, so it's a smaller snack for those fish. Then for your color selection, I keep it really simple. You do really just need that silver, white, and gold. That's how I'm gonna choose it, base color. So there are some that are like white with a green back or white with a blue back, or it depends on which brand you're buying, on what options you have. But those 3 colors are the base color that I'm gonna go with, is a chrome, gold, white. The gold is going to work best on your cloudy days or a little bit stained water. The white is going to work best on any day if you have stained water. That's going to be the best one for any type of stained water. And then your chrome is going to work best on clearer waters or sunny days. That's how I'm going to choose the color. And then your size, I'm going to start with the 1/2 ounce almost always. If I need to go a little bit shallower or less vibration with that smaller bait, I'll go to the 3/8. If I need to get deeper and I can't feel, it could be wind driven, that you can't feel your bait with the wind or whatever it might be, that's when I'm gonna go to the heavier one that could be a 7/8, 3/4, anything like that. And then we'll break down how to rig it up, choose the whole selection on your bait, all that kind of stuff out there on the water. So let's head back out there, see if we can catch us a couple smallmouth on the blade bait, show you how to fish it, and have you catching more fish this winter on that bait right there. It's a deadly bait through winter bass fishing, especially for smallmouth. So let's head out on the water and see what we can catch. All right, so now that we broke down everything lipless. It looks like a lipless crankbait, but that's not how you fish it. We're going to show you how to do that in just a second here. First thing I want to mention on your bait right here is going to be a clip. Most baits will have a few openings that you can put your clip in. One, make sure you always have one with a clip. If you tie this direct to this bait, you will snap off as soon as you set the hook on a fish. It will immediately break. The metal just cuts right through it. So tie onto the clip, and then you can move the clip between these different holes based on how you're going to fish. If you're going to fish in really deep water, 60, 40, even like 30 foot of water, straight up and down underneath the boat, you're not going to cast that bait. You're going to put it in this back hole. If you're going to do a little bit of both, and you're fishing in deep water, you're going to put it in that middle hole. And then if you're fishing shallower water, or you're going to cast it and bring it back towards you, which is what we're going to have to do today, because if I dropped it straight underneath me, the bait would be back there before it ever hit the bottom. You're going to put it in that front hole. That is going to eliminate most of the tangles that you're going to get from this bait wrapping around and hooking the line. You are still going to get tangled, you're going to lose some cast, and it's going to suck, because this bait's going to flutter up off the bottom, and as it falls, it's going to wrap onto the fluorocarbon or something like that, and you're going to end up getting tangled up. Gently lift your bait up off the bottom, you're going to feel it thump 1 or 2 times, and then you're going to stop and let it fall right back down to the bottom on slack line. You're always, the only time your line is going to be tight is when you're connecting with the bait to bring it up off the bottom, and then you're going to let it fall right back down. Always on slack line. You'll watch your line, you might actually see them pick it up off the bottom or anything like that, but 99% of the time your bait is going to be on slack line and creating that flutter and vibration and flash. Do not give this bait too much action, especially in the winter. So while it looks like I'm popping it a lot, I'm pulling the slack out of my line until I connected that bait 2 or 3 flutters, and that thing's going straight back down to the bottom. I don't want it going 6 feet off the bottom and then coming back down, and then 6 feet off the bottom and coming back down. It just looks super unnatural that way. You're trying to mimic a dying bait fish, so you just want it coming like 3-4 inches off the bottom, one that's trying to get up off the bottom and then falls back down. And that's all you're trying to do with this bait. And then me, I'm working it pretty quickly because I have to with the current, or else it's going to get stuck in rocks. I'm going to try and start slowing it down here a little bit too. Oh, hang on, we got one. Maybe I don't have to slow it down. You can see he just whacked that right off the bottom. I was fluttering it, and when you lift up, you'll just automatically hook set into those fish. So let's get him up in the boat, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more. Treble hooks are nice because you get every point in them. Like if they come over and sniff this bait, they're getting hooked 9 times out of 10. And if you got a good quality treble hook on there that's sharp, they usually don't come off this time of year. You'll keep them pinned pretty well back to the boat. The sun is killing me here, completely blown out, but there's a decent one right there. We're gonna throw him back, see if we can get us another one. All right, I just had a glitch with my GoPro there, so I'm hoping I didn't lose all of that footage. If it did, it's probably blown out on this back camera, but I try running 2 just to pick up on everything. Basically what I was doing there is lifting this bait off the bottom 1 or 2 feet, letting it fall back down, imitating a dying shad, working it down the current here. In the river, I'm gonna have to work it pretty quick like that and keep it from washing underneath a rock and then getting snagged. But on a lake, especially Lake Erie, like that's the place this bait really plays. If you're fishing this on Lake Erie or something like that, you're actually going to pause that bait a lot longer. And as the water gets colder, then you're gonna pause it even longer. You're gonna fish it like a jerk bait. So that bait's gonna lay on the bottom, it's gonna be shiny, it's gonna flutter up, draw those fish over, it's gonna fall back down on the bottom. They're gonna come look at it, and then you're gonna flutter it back up, and then it's gonna fall to the bottom. They're gonna come a little closer, and then you're gonna pause it, and you're gonna keep repeating that, and your pause is 1 second, 2 seconds. You gotta play around with how long you have to pause it. But as you're pausing it, that's when those fish are gonna come over and inspect that, and then when you flutter it up in their face and it darts up and they're sitting there looking at it, that's when you're gonna get that bite. So it's more of a reaction bite than anything. But that's all I'm doing. I'm literally just hopping this bait in place, working it down this current here. You just don't want to overwork that bait. So we're going to keep fishing this thing and see if we can get us another one on it. The biggest key is to not overwork that bait. If you're working it too hard, you can see right there I got a little tangle. Sometimes that'll happen, it'll hook up on that back treble. But if you're snapping that bait really hard, you're fishing it way too much for these fish. I got a couple underneath the boat here. We'll see if we can get them to bite. You're basically fishing this like a worm. You just lift it up like a Texas rigged worm, let it fall back down to the bottom. The hardest thing is feeling it out there on fluorocarbon or mono. Like, you can barely feel anything when it's that far out. It's very easy to feel when it's directly underneath the boat, but the further you make a cast, the harder it is to feel, and that's when I'll go to the spinning rod with braid if I'm really casting it. But I have all my spinning rods occupied right now, so it kind of is what it is. I'm just fishing it on my bait caster here. Most of the time I'm probably, like, there's a couple more out in front of the boat here. I'm probably going to try and just like drop on their heads, because it's a lot easier in the current to fish right on their heads. I'll use the 2D sonar to figure out where they're sitting and then drop it right on top of them and try and get them to bite it that way, because it's a heck of a lot easier when you're straight up and down in the current. Well, that's going to do it for today's blade bait video. I cannot catch another fish and I can't feel my hands anymore, so we are not going to be able to catch another fish to finish off today's video, but make sure you're working that bait nice and slowly. That was a basic rundown of how to fish the blade bait. I will be going on a little blade bait adventure tomorrow up on Lake Erie, so hopefully that video will be coming in the near future. If you guys want to see more about how to fish a blade bait, might not be for a bass, but it's for a fish that's been on my bucket list for a very, very long time, and we're gonna go jig some blade baits for them. So hopefully that video comes out in the near future too. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the subscribe button down below. Check this video out right here. I did another blade bait video. If you want to learn more about this guy, check that one out right there, and leave a like down below, and thanks for watching.